Right here, right there. That just makes it a big plus fun conference. All right, it's a quarter past the hour. We'll go ahead and get started here. So if you finish up gathering your soda, Sprite, whatnot, and find your seat. And first up this afternoon, we have Tim from Iowa DOT.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. Tim Simodanis. I'm with the Iowa DOT and the Traffic Operations Bureau. I'm our state traffic operations engineer or state TISMO engineer. I'll explain some of that. Not to be confused with our state traffic engineer, Chris Poole.
That.
All right.
That,
Space bar. Got it. Thank you. So I'd like to kind of start by, I know this could be confusing. We have Traffic Operations Bureau, Traffic and Safety Bureau. So tomorrow will be the Traffic and Safety Bureau's day when they go through the Traffic and Safety Forum. You'll hear from all that group. So Traffic Operations, kind of put the image of our Traffic Management Center, because kind of what we do a lot centers on Traffic Management Center. Andy Lewis is our Bureau Director. I'm the Assistant Director. We have the Traffic Management Center, which also dispatches Highway Helper in Council Bluffs, Des Moines, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and Quad Cities. That's Ashley Hochberger and assisted by Dawn Williams. Our 511 traveler information is done by Sinclair Stolley. Our intelligent transportation systems, so that was my position a few years back. Mark Van Dyke is our state ITS engineer, assisted by Jason Dale, another mechanical engineer actually. Traffic incident management is Ted Shipley, and Don also helps with that as part of our bureau. Emergency operations, so being prepared for emergency, and then also a lot of the tracking and paperwork that has to be done if there's a federal funds to get reimbursed for its emergency incident. And Danielle and Brenda doing admin and financial tracking. So on the other side, I show traffic and safety, kind of, I got the MUTCD there, it's kind of the traditional traffic engineering. Steve Gent's their director. And I'm thinking of it another way too. You saw our list is about a dozen people on our staff. Traffic and safety has 30, almost 40, I think, when you count the advertising management, sign shop, and things like that. On the other side, we contract out for Traffic Management Center staffing, Highway Helper staffing, all of our ITS field maintenance. So we have a lot bigger staff that's all contracted out for a lot of the things that we do. The part of my title is this TISMO, this term, Transportation Systems Management and Operations. So like, what does that really mean? That it's really looking at everything. If you step back a level, we can have great roads, great bridges, but if it's not working right, if you're stuck in traffic, if an incident snarls things up.
Right there. Right.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, so the whole TISMO idea is we have good roads and bridges, but if they're not working, if one incident snarls things up, if you got bottlenecks, your construction isn't working well, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So this is like looking at everything we can do to make all those things work better. Optimizing safety and efficiency, trying to take advantage of what you've got for existing infrastructure, think across systems, across jurisdictions, can be both projects and services that we provide. So that's not much controversial about that. I guess it's some of that stuff we already do anyway. So I'll get into more detail about how this kind of changes. The reverse of that is like we're all users of the system too, so we all know what annoys us. Like, why are we stopping here? Why is this not working? So we covered that up. That's right. Yeah. So it's kind of like that's kind of one of the things I like about this traffic operations is the things that are annoying. We get to do something about it. To learn more about TSMO, we've got our TSMO website as part of the DOT's website. It has a good explanation of it, some background, how we did our program plan and strategic plan, and so how we've kind of organized our approach to TSMO. At the bottom left over there is contact us. You can see the map of, we now have district TSMO engineers. We've always had traffic techs, and they're still, each of the 6 districts has traffic tech. You can see our TSMO engineers. There's 3 districts have them, but then they also kind of cover an adjacent district roughly. Andy, there you see Andy, who's the newest, took Ben Hucker's old position in districts 1 and 2, and Austin Yates and Newman. So I said how we kind of break down TSMO. It's such a broad topic. We have 8 service layer plans where we kind of break it into pieces. I have different groups working on those. I've highlighted some of the ones I'll talk about today in a little more detail. Starting with travel information. So this is Sinclair Stolley's area. She's in our bureau. Tina Greenfield's in maintenance, so looking at winter maintenance. We've tried different things, not just us. A lot of states are looking at, can we get good enough forecasting and weather information to kind of predict and know what the road conditions are just from weather stations all over. And just like other states, it kind of works, but it still has a lot of glitches in it. So what we're going with this winter, I think it's coming, just kind of needs continual revision, is we've switched systems, and now we're going to be sending text alerts to our field maintenance. They're the ones that populate the 511 map. It's not actually our drivers, it's the supervisors. So the drivers report to their supervisors. The supervisors have the method of putting in the service conditions for winter road conditions. So we'll be able to get alerts from the predictive weather to say we've got changing conditions, and then they can confirm it manually. Tracking maintenance operations, especially moving operations, that's always a challenge to know where are they at, are they actually working or not. So we're taking advantage of our automatic vehicle locating systems in our maintenance trucks to be able to see if they're going at highway speed, we can ignore that. Or if they're parked, we can off the road, we can ignore that. But if they're on the road or they're moving on the road, get so far outputs to a couple places. One would be to Waze, so users of the Waze app can get the information. Another would be a data feed into the TMC, so they can help monitor and post messages as needed and change the status of 511. It's an effort with the Intrans. I mentioned Waze. So if you're familiar with the Waze app, like Google Maps or Apple Maps, so Waze accepts user input. So crowdsource is what we call that, and probe too. It knows where you're at, how fast you're going. So you're an input to the speeds. And then you can also enter in, if you got to see police, you see a stalled vehicle or a crash, or if you're stuck in traffic. So we have a two-way partnership with their connected citizens, connected communities, I think is the term they're using now, where if you're using the Waze app, it may say that there's a construction head or stalled vehicle head, and it'll just say reported by whatever user. Some of those will say, especially construction, reported by Iowa DOT. So we're one of the users. Then we can also have a feed. So if anybody reports a crash or an incident or something, our TMC can see it. So here you see just over the last 5 or so years, what percentage of the incidents that our TMC receives came from Waze notifications. You see we're over 20 to 35% there. Part of our switching over to ITS, that service layer plan, we wanted to see, we've kind of held steady on our dynamic message signs, but we're seeing more and more needs. That's still our best way to get the information to drivers in the car. So we want to look and see, all right, we've got a lot of requests for DMS. Where does it make most sense to install them first? We have this ICE operations analysis tool that was maybe 5 years ago that first came out. We wanted to refresh all that data and see, does it all still make sense? So we're doing that right now. And I think the neat thing is it's all GIS based, segment based. We'll be able to use all those fields that are there we'll have the base data too. We'll use it to decide like a scoring system for our network, like where would DMS be most beneficial. But we've already talked about, another group's looking at shoulder widths. Maybe we can change the weighting on these or some of these scoring methods and help make other decisions like that too. So it's not just for the single use, but it'll be neat to have available. I highlighted in there a potential for crash reduction. It's something that our safety group has been pushing people toward, not just crash rates, but potential for crash reduction is a better way to see where safety improvements might be needed. But this is a little bit different though. When you're thinking about where do we put cameras, we're not preventing crashes with cameras. We want to see where those are at. So again, we'll probably have like both of those options in there, and you can pick and choose what makes most sense for your application. Some things we've got going right now with work zones. We've got some just temporary task forces started. One's looking at the long-term temporary transverse rumble strips. So today there is portable rumble strips that we'll put out in front of like a flagging situation or where we have a signal where somebody may not expect it. But those are the ones that are like rubber and heavy and sit on the road, and they can shift after a while, and you pick them up each day and stuff. So, but this is looking for something that could be on the interstate, could be out there for months at a time, that you can safe at highway speeds, motorcycles and cars, but something that can get people's attention. So it is kind of new for us because we've always kind of said we want rumble strips to mean stop ahead. So we've avoided putting those on most places without stop condition, but we keep seeing all these rear end crashes, the back of queue at high speeds where people just aren't looking where they're going. Maybe this will be that thing that can get people's attention. We're looking at emergency pull-off guidance. So on I-35 through Ankeny, we've got some emergency pull-offs. They're pretty small, kind of narrow. We've used them different sizes and designs in other parts of the state. We haven't used them in others. So we're looking to see like what other states have, what might be makes sense for Iowa to use. Work zone speed management. So this is like a perpetual topic, and Dan Sprengler at the DOT has been our work zone traffic control engineer. It's been one of his goals for most of his career. He's about retirement age, so we're kind of using this to keep him around so we can, as soon as you get this fixed, then you can retire. So, but a lot of it is like, not just speed limits. We can't do automated enforcement. So what else can we do? We make sure our speed limits are accurate for what they need to be. Because the other balancing thing is, if your speed limits are too low, your capacity is lower, and then you have more backup. So if we can set the speeds higher when appropriate, if there's no work around, no workers close by, let's use a little bit higher speeds. Maybe we can get more throughput and not have the backups. But then still make sure that the speed limits mean something when you need them to slow down. Lane closures, this has been a topic for a while now. If you won't spend too much time, because if you're familiar with it, you probably used it. If you don't use it, you probably don't care about it, but we have a lane closure planning tool, which takes our sensor data. You can pick the sensor where you're trying to decide where you need to have a lane closed, say your date or future date, the type of closure. Down at the bottom here, it's the hours of the day for a single month, and then the colors are days of the week. So you can see based on the lane closure type, got the threshold for that capacity. So that tells you, okay, we can work in the morning, but we're gonna have to stay off the road, and then you can look at the days of the week. There's different ways to visualize it too. That was a little too complicated sometimes. So we wanted something that can be a little bit easier. Each district has a static lane closure map, which is kind of like the conservative version of that. So it's not specific to year or month of the year, but it does have the days of the week, but just kind of a conservative starting point. If this map says you're okay, you should be okay. If you want to work beyond that, you probably need to do some more analysis to see when you should or shouldn't be closing lanes. And the big next step for lane closures, our lane closure system. Willie Sorensen and myself leading a group. This is going to be a pretty comprehensive system. We want to plan lane closures and then track them once they're there. Watch for conflicts. You can see we've been working for about a year now on just the DOT maintenance, so our own staff. So when they're going to be closing the lane, put it in there, it can pre-screen it, make sure you don't have a conflicting lane closure. And if it's marginal, you would go to like the local maintenance garage, maintenance manager to be able to look at it and approve it or deny it. We're trying to make this so it's easy to use, like you can use it on a phone, be web-based. The next phase we're also starting at the same time is for our construction project. So even for future projects, would get in there as a placeholder. And then once a contractor wins a job, they would go in there and say when exactly they're planning to close the lane, and we could have a better record of better information for the traffic management center, better information for drivers as well. And the last module would be third parties, cities, utilities, towing and recovery. The last thing I want to talk about with work zones is a kind of a unique one project up here in Okoboji, Northwest Iowa. US 71 goes between the lakes. There's a causeway in the middle. This year, had some work along there, needed to go down to a single lane. There's a lot of summer visitors, so there are requirements where they had to keep all the lanes open between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So they're working in the spring and now again in the fall. So, how do we've got signs trying to detour, but it's not actually closed. There's local access all the way through there. So it's one of those like we don't want people to go there, but we can't tell them it's closed. So we've got sign for detours at the ends, but then, all right, so what we've done before in some other projects is we've done Bluetooth before to give travel times, but we're afraid like even with travel times, you may still be encouraging people to use it because it might be faster, even if you're slowed down just because there's so much out of distance travel for the alternate route. And then the other challenge is you're trying to get a travel time message on a portable dynamic message sign. So you got 8 characters wide by 3 rows that you just can't say much on those signs. And then how do you know what your destination is? Like most of we do travel times in our metro areas, and it's, to get to the Northeast Mix or whatever, this exit is so many minutes. There's not a whole lot of traffic, I don't think, that's going end to end here. So trying to define a destination and a travel time that makes sense would be another challenge. So, boy, what can we do? We've got INRIX data for one thing, that helps. So we don't have to have Bluetooth sensors all over. We can get segment speeds for the detour route and the through route. Can we do delay instead of travel time? So we can say how long is it going to take to get through there traditionally compared to right now when things are slowed down, you may have to go head to head in pieces. So what we ended up putting is these signs at the north end and the south end. So you're never really telling anybody, encouraging them to go through the path. There's always some delay there because there is a slowdown through there. So you can see it says northbound, road work delays, US 71 North, 3 minutes of delay. This was like kind of a free flow time, but it's still slowed down through the project. And then at the north end, it says US 71 South, 3 minutes of delay. And that can go up. And it's our INRIX data too. So like Bluetooth, you may not have people going end to end. You don't really need that for INRIX, just because you're getting segment speeds. So I thought this was pretty neat. It was the first time we've done that. I just checked it yesterday and saw that we have some full closures in there with detours, and our travel times or our delay was still showing like 3 and 4 minutes. So like that can't be right with those detours in place. So I think what INRIX does is it doesn't see cars, so it reverts to historical data. So it assumes people are just driving through there. So just talked to Skylar this morning, and I think we might have to do a little workaround as long as those closures are in place to make up for that. So it's a great idea. There's always the details that can get you. Our last service layer plan is active transportation demand management. So this is kind of akin to integrated corridor management. Like, what are the things that we can do to kind of impact demand and traffic kind of hands-on? So you see some examples there, ramp metering, and actually our Des Moines integrated corridor management that we did a few years ago has kind of led us to consider ramp metering. If it wasn't for COVID, I really believe we would have ramp meters on I-235 today, but those peaks have been shallow enough that we didn't need to do it. But we are still looking at dynamic shoulder use on 3580 around the northwest side of Des Moines. I was waiting for the funding and the laws to allow it. The rules changes, so we'll see where that goes. The other, I guess, dynamic speed, we can't do dynamic speeds, but we're looking at adding more overhead DMS on 3580 for more like queue detection and warning, just to kind of let people know when there's a slowdown up ahead. And then active parking management, we have our own, not with the cities, but with our truck parking. I would say we're doing that already in our rest areas and private truck stops in Iowa. The other thing that keeps kind of floating up to the top with active transportation demand management is traffic signals. So in Iowa, we don't do traffic signals. We'll review them and help them get installed, maybe help fund them, and then we hand them over to the city to operate and maintain. So if we're looking at the system, maybe is there an opportunity here as the DOT to kind of help coordinate some of this? And I think some things that may go through this. Some things maybe are opportunities or strengths. There's university experts, and especially when we had WEJO data, that probe data from connected vehicles. There's a lot of information there that can help see how signals are working or not working. Now, WEJO is off the board right now as bankruptcy, but we're hoping somebody will fill that void soon enough. And we've got consultant expertise. I think maybe DOT support to kind of look at not just what's our responsibility, what can we do to help the system. The weakness is always funding, the DOT expertise. I think hiring Andy Swisher probably more than doubled our traffic signal expertise as a department, but but that's okay. I mean, we're not looking to take it over. We're just seeing what we can do to help the system. Oh, I said define the problem there too. So we're kind of starting down this path, but I really don't know if is the problem big cities, medium cities, small cities? Is it a safety problem? Is it a delay problem, operational problem? So I'm really kind of going into this with an open mind, like and then how bad are those problems and what scale should we be addressing those? Opportunities, like I said, is the new technologies and data. I think maybe there's some things that weren't available in the past that might help. It seemed like it used to be, if you want to do signals, you're going to have to go do expensive counts. You're going to spend a ton of money on detection and upgrading all the systems and stuff. But maybe there's some opportunities to do things for not quite as expensive. And threats, just our traditional roles, getting out of maybe what we used to doing, and then trying to find a way to do it equitably across the state. Another big thing that we've done with Tismo is started to go. We've got decades and decades of building things, on time, on budget, and we can crank out plans and projects. So we're really good at that. But now trying to think operations while we're doing that. And Charlie Purcell in our project development division has kind of taken this on. They've brainstormed some ideas, and a lot of these are moving forward, and some have already been done. Thinking more operations during the planning phase. Right now, we're looking at our rural 2-lane bridges. Sometimes we'll do accelerated bridge construction. How far out of distance travel is acceptable, and how long should that last? Just paved shoulders. I mentioned that before. The median side end is the one thing we're looking at right now. Is that wide enough? It's not quite wide enough to fit a car. Is that causing problems if you do that? Some issues like that. We looked at a lot of our interstate projects. You have to do a median crossover, and that can be a big holdup in the spring, waiting for the ground to dry up enough to construct that median crossover. If we can do those in the fall, we can start our construction projects on the interstate sooner in the spring. And then we're looking at work zones more closely at the end of the year, maybe not just looking at how did construction go, but what traffic problems did we have, and what can we learn from that for other parts of the state and for design, people putting together traffic control for future projects. Last thing I'll wrap up here with is our Intrans has been, we give them our camera feeds and our data from our sensors, and they've just been making all these different tools and ways to analyze it. So that QR code will take you to the link. I'll do this at the end, so I don't care if you look at it. I'll be done talking. You can use your phones for that. But so that QR code takes you to our DOT performance, and then down at the bottom is the link to the Iowa State University operations and safety dashboards. I've got the QR code on the next page. So the actual page looks like this. It's just that has a longer URL. It's harder to put that into a QR code or slide. So some of the things that they're doing is our crash data, our TMC incident data, any congestion using our INRIX data, weather data, work zones, any place we have work zone sensors, our camera feeds. So you'll see there's 20 plus different links in there to different tools that you can see, camera videos from the day. They're actually grabbing cameras from crashes. If there's a camera near a crash, they'll save those. Our secondary crash data is in there. So it's just it's amazing all the neat tools that are going on in there. And I think that's it. Yeah, so I'll leave that up there. Any questions? Yeah.
So just to clarify on that, Highway 71, you were saying that there was a delay of 3 minutes. on the screen, it showed that there was a 4-week full closure. But when you're communicating delay, was it using temp signals to alternate traffic, and so that was the delay, or I'm trying to figure out what was the delay from?
So they're using we had to pre-populate the speed when there's nothing there. So it's using the INRIX speeds along the segments. And I think for those ones that were closed, it was using probably historical speed on that segment to calculate like today's speeds, comparing that to the traditional speed. So is that what you mean?
Well, because I was thinking when you were saying you had the change of message signs up at where 71 met, I think 86 or whatever.
Right.
And is that trying to say, well, if you take 71, you're going to experience a 3-minute delay, so you're trying to encourage people to go out and use 86 or on the bypass?
Right. Yeah, and the intention is that's the delay compared to free flow when there was no construction.
Yeah.
The construction is causing 3 minutes of delay.
Okay, but was the causeway, was it down to 1 lane? Was that the issue?
No, I think now currently it's all 2 lanes. It's at the north of the causeway. It's a full closure, so they're detouring around through city streets. And that's what the problem is. I don't think we have INRIX data on those city streets. So we'll just have to take an estimate at that delay, use that and make sure we know when that reopens. The south end, I think the northbound is still on the highway and the southbound is getting detoured. So again, like we have to trick it and manually put in a delay if we don't have INRIX data on those detour routes. Sure.
Like Arthur might be happening across like 160. Obviously that a lot of people detoured onto city streets, and we were aware that the closure was going to occur, but then we started to have to shuffle some projects that we had because we had closures on the routes that would take that extra traffic. So is that in the future goal to kind of increase that communication so that we're looking at it as a whole system as opposed to 2 separate systems?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think hopefully the lane closure system would be a way to start knowing more what's coming farther down the road. I don't know, we haven't really talked about on local roads, but most of our detours are usually on state routes though, aren't they? Right, yeah, right. Not the one your phone tells you. Right.
City standpoint, we were trying to balance, should we own some projects, should we, unfortunately, the one in Grand
Yeah.
But anyway, so that communication or that coordination might be beneficial on larger projects. Even if it's not the sign detour, it's going on to city streets, and then so that we can help not clog up those arteries as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of the lane closure coordination, and then a lot of it's district communication with the locals. Yeah. State level, local level. What would be work in the area? But kind of different way that work. I assume that was yeah. Yeah, the Newman Abuisa is the District 6 TISMO engineer. He's talked about those meetings with the different metro areas and stuff. That's like maybe our TISMO engineers can share those experiences too. Yeah, Jim.
We actually have 2.
Yeah.
And a little frustrating when you look on the 511 side and find out they're going to do a closure of the interstate that same night and the all the traffic on your streets. Heads up. Notices.
Sure. Yeah.
One more question. I have one more quick one. Is the Waze application, is that just any traveler can just report something and then it's automatically uploaded, or is there a verification of that? I mean, what if a
Yeah.
traveler reports something that really isn't an incident, then you're putting it up there, I guess, is there?
Yeah, if you've never used it, you'll see something reported and it'll always ask you at the bottom, still there or not. You only see it as you're approaching it. It'll say, vehicle on the shoulder.
Other people
It-
are verifying.
Right, and you can say yes or no. And I don't know if they're take your account away if you keep doing things that are always turned away or something. And I think like the things that we repeat on there will it has to be repeated multiple times. Or confirm it with the camera before we put it under our name or something.
Right. To bring up our next speaker, which is the Ames master plan, right?
Okay. Every once in a while, I'll ask if it's still there. Okay. I was just curious, something, so that kind of self.
All right. Our next speaker is Tyler.
All right. Who has been to Ames? Any of you? Good start. Perfect. I doubt you saw, but I saw right when we got off the interstate here, the highway today, University Avenue, they're putting in conduit as part of this project. So it's always fun to see. And first picture. Shout out. Tell by that sweet beard. No. All right. So also we have in the room some royalty from the city of Ames itself, Mr. Damien and Kyle Thompson over there. Say hi, Kyle and Damien. All right. We're gonna talk about the Ames traffic. He was a part of the team at one point, so. Doug Rochelle, GBSI. Been fortunate enough to hang out with Damien and Kyle, and then Mark Danson to work on the Ames ITS or traffic signal master plan. So this was a project where the city vehicles, autonomous vehicles. The city of Ames itself does not have any fiber optics in the field here. Well, there likely will be about a week or two from now, but it's getting ready to get installed very soon. So currently, phase one. Installing conduit, installing handholds, and then phase 3 design is underway. So we're going to kind of dive into this project. Again, mention the team members. Look at that sweet looking guy from South Dakota again, inventorying traffic signal cabinet equipment, Mr. Chase Butler himself. And then also just kind of noting that handhole. Kind of again, the fiber architecture that was used was trunk fiber cable going, up and down the arterial with a splice enclosure housed in the cat or the side of the handhold there, and then a 24 count branch cable going into the cabinet. Study approach. Again, just kind of looked at the diagram approach with the stakeholder. Put together, we won't kind of dive into too much study process. the foundation to this was inventorying what the city had, determining where they wanted to go forward with, and then figuring out the steps to get there. So let's kind of take a quick. And then there's about 6 school crossing signals as well. And then kind of in this inset here, Iowa State University, they also and then kind of taking a look at the field. Very much so. Roughly about kind of a mixture of twisted wire pair and serial communications. And then part of kind of the overall. The again, clunky Brad Becker. It was well past its time, and then also the conduit that the twisted wire pair was in was in not the great shape. So Brad Becker, we wanted a complete, fresh, new install. So these are the kind of the 4 primary corridors that the existing conduit is about today, and we're actually installing new conduit along these similar corridors. So again, that kind of worked through kind of the study process. Again, this is very much abbreviated overview of the process itself, but ultimately kind of culminated in this traffic signal master plan and funding evaluation. Taken out to about projects. This was finalized around each of the phases, around $1.5 million. This map here on the right, don't try to make heads or tails of it, but there's no. I'm gonna dive into phase 1 and phase 2 here. Phase 1 includes along Duff Avenue. There's the kind of I-35, US 30, here roughly here, and then Ames Airport. There's a fire station number 3. So we ran up Duff Avenue and then past Lincoln Way and then past Mary Greeley Hospital. And then at 13th Street, we headed towards the east, towards Dayton Avenue, down Dayton Avenue, across a railroad bridge there, and then along Edison Street into the Public Works Garage. Around 25,000 feet of conduit fiber. This phase included 4 cross-connect cabinets that just kind of, we'll get into a little bit of a hub sites with layer 3 switches, one at number 3, and one at the Public Works building. And then also it did the McCain. Phase 2 kind of picked up and built off of phase 1. It came out of the Public Works building, Edison Street, down Dayton Avenue, back to Lincoln Way, across Duff Avenue, picked up some Grand Avenue chunk underneath the railroad tracks over to 6 to get back to the City Hall, and continued along Lincoln Way down to University Avenue, and then through this fiber that I spoke of earlier in front of the building here, and then along back on Airport Road back to Duff Avenue. 37,000 feet of fiber. And then a couple new hub sites. And then, there's kind of a visual of what 1 and the 708 pair number, which was phase 2. A portion of the construction cost. DOT were good partners. Taking advantage of the nice weather in these photos and documenting everything we saw. And then or is it more of a zoomed in view of the conduits? That's example one here is at Duff Avenue, Lincoln Way, Colorama, and there's a coffee shop and an auto type place here. We got the conduit going towards the east and west and then north and south. This is one of the locations of the cross connect cabinet to where when there's multiple points. Those fiber splice terminations and have those in the cross connect cabinet rather than those occurring in an underground splice enclosure. Colin Dyer is a little bit. Colin, he's the mastermind behind kind of the overall fiber architecture. The project is kind of a mixture of layer 2 and layer 3 switches. Layer 2, Pepperell and Fuchs. Myself or Damien know after or later today. Layer 3 switches. And then I mentioned the McCain transparency. This kind of looking at, we got the IP addressing in that table there. You can't read, and that's completely okay. But this is there's kind of an architecture visual of the mapping. Again, we talked about the layer 3 switch at fire station number 3, layer 3 switch at the maintenance public works garage, and then there's another layer 3 switch at City Hall itself. And then kind of this orange solid line is that layer 3 backbone thing between the layers. And then kind of everything else is just that layer 2 distribution level. Or cross connect locations, or there were some random locations where it was just the fiber splicing detail sheets for one of the intersections where we show the 144 count trunk line fiber, and then we're splicing the blue tube. We ran a 24 count single mode fiber into the cabinet. This kind of illustrates the termination panel and termination enclosure running into that Pepperell and Fuchs layer 2 switch. A couple of other devices to point out. Majority of it was swapping out the controller. And a lot of it was swapping out the conflict monitors to the IP EDI model. We had quite a few battery backup systems, quite a few access, Pantel zoom cameras for detection. And then, let's see. One thing also we did on this project was we did a web power digital IP-based power surge protector where you can remotely plug and unplug devices on and off remotely. The project did include $60 view process and have the experience of working with the FAA. That's always fun. And then also, speaking of fun, let's talk about some railroad coordination, right? So we got Duff Avenue. Whatever. These are called hot tracks. These are high speed, a lot of trains a day. Very critical across the United States. So went through that process of getting those forms reviewed, coordinated with, and then ultimately approved. Now working with the contractor to go through the construction side of the coordination efforts there. And then working with our awesome the, not Jeff Cunningham, somebody help me. Brian Whaley, yep, Brian Whaley, working through that with him. We had quite a few through that process. And then each of the two. This is a picture before. On there, the conduit will come up and ride the bridge, obviously across the river, or the stream, or the creek, whatever it is. With the our structural engineer friends to get those details produced. And then I mentioned earlier, phase 3. This was the portion we picked up as part of phase 2, but then phase 3. Those Grand Avenue down to the South 3rd, South 4th Street corridors, and then up Grand Avenue, all the way pretty much darn near the city limits up there. Also picks up the 13th Street corridor between Grand and Duff Avenue. We fold in, we connect, we bring online fire station number 1, and then we bring the conduit and fiber up Duff Avenue, and then we bring the conduit and fiber into the golf course there, which is a layer 3 hub site location. So, March 19th, 20. With the DOT and the city on final details for that, and then currently we have regular probably about every 4 or 6 weeks construction calls with Van Monnen. And with that, I know I ran through it quickly. I wanted to get back. Any questions? Correct. Yeah. So we express the other ones.
Your drop out just said all.
Yes. Yes. Yep. You got it.
Do you have, will the Iowa State signals, will those be tied in so they'll show up on Transparity too, even though that's not the cities? Or?
Not at this time. TBD. TBD. Adam, then Leslie. I'm sure that was considered. Other cities. Fibers that aren't being used for the city traffic side. Yeah.
It's a lot. And then kind of get the liability of the pricing.
Okay. Leslie?
So, is there a plan or a thought to either share the fiber or share the conduit? Have a network for city groups?
Yes, it's all the same council. Council's property once the project is done. And so we can connect any city facility. The big thing was is that we didn't want a condition control cabinet out in the field. So the master plan specifically looked at city buildings, mainly just for the air conditioning and the
Security control.
yeah. And staff watching those locations all the time.
And many times it kind of lended itself to we wanted a fiber drop connection there anyways from City Hall. I'd have to lean towards Callan on that one. Yeah. Yeah. I'll ask Colin. I'll ask Colin next time I talk to him. Yep. I see Volk smiling already. We talk about that often. Volk had a topic all around in the ITF city world where, that was one of the ideas too. We wanted to get the stuff underground, so to speak, and on the, but that number two key, that's the number one failure point. So, and I don't know if Brad will ever look into the new wave of switching out those to more of an advanced key, maybe, type deal. Yeah.
Indicated to them. And I guess it's possible.
Depends on those game day traffic, right?
If you see Tom Cruise.
So Tyler, thank you very much.
Oh, sweet. Thanks, Rick.
Bring up our last presenter for this grouping. And we'll see if it works. Not quite. So we need to go down here and there we go. Wasama.
Sure.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thank you, John. Well, hi, my name is Wasama Abdullah, and I'm a traffic engineer with FOSS. And today I will present to you about a recent project that we worked on with the City of Johnston. So this is a citywide traffic study. So it's a proactive and holistic transportation safety and traffic operations framework that included all the components that you can see on the screen here that I will briefly go over in a very high level, just for the sake of time, just to see how all these components came together to come up with our final recommendations and our final deliverable. So a little bit of background. The City of Johnston in 2022 conducted a community survey, and one of the trends that they found in this survey that the traffic flow in Johnston ranked number 3 in this inspection. So the City of Johnston contracted with both, and they asked us to conduct a citywide traffic study to basically detect any traffic operation deficiencies, safety concerns, and also seek more input from the public so we can see how we can make it better. For those of you who don't know, the City of Johnston is a small city. It sits right at the far north of, it's considered part of the metro area, and it has a population of about 25,000 people. The City of Johnston has 2 major gateways from Interstate I-80 and I-35. And I want to point out that the City of Johnston is home to some of the companies with recognizable names like Pioneer, Corteva, Iowa Public Television, and Iowa National Guard, Camp Dodge. So with that and the planned residential and commercial growth planned in the city, also in the region overall, the City of Johnston's arterials are expected to witness traffic growth. So if we take a closer look at the City of Johnston's transportation network, we can see that it has somewhat of a unique setting. We have several residential neighborhoods that are separated by large parallel arterials. And if you commute from or to, or you are from Johnston, then you must be familiar with like Northwest 86th Street, Mulhay Road, Northwest 62nd Street. If you commute from Ankeny or here in Ames, then you have to know Northwest Beaver Drive, and specifically Northwest Beaver Drive and Northwest 66th intersection. That sounds to be a very interesting intersection. And so in the City of Johnston, we have 25 signalized intersections and 11 roundabouts. And because of that, we decided to go into a non-traditional route for our data collection. And instead of the traditional traffic cameras and traffic video counting services, we decided to go the big data route. And so we utilized the street light insights data. So we obtained current traffic volumes as well as historical ones for 35 intersections, and we got 150 zones. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar or have used streetlight data or big data, but it's probe data that they get from cell phones, connected vehicles, and even commercial fleet. And that data can be used basically for our turning movement counts or ADTs. So there has been some white papers about the validity and the accuracy of probe data. And we've looked at some of the white papers, but we at FOSS, also our traffic team, we conducted a partial sensitivity analysis with some of the historical data that we know we've collected using different methods, and we found the accuracy of this data to be acceptable. Here, after we got our TMCs, we were able to map our ADTs on the streets, the City of Johnston, and we can see that the two lines with the highest ADTs ranging from 11K vehicles per day to about 24. We can see that those are basically concentrated at our two gateways to the city, Mulhay Road and Northwest 86. And then we can see volumes start dissipate as we enter the city. So moving on from our background and existing conditions and data, we set 4 technical goals for the study. We wanted to identify existing traffic congestion locations with focus on the major ones. We wanted to identify any system-wide deficiencies as related to any traffic operation and traffic signal technology. Also, we wanted to review any existing high crash locations, and we wanted to gather input from the public and the stakeholders. With that, we set 4 deliverable goals to the study. We wanted to provide the city with short and long-term solutions. We wanted to advise them for any policy changes. We wanted to develop conceptual layouts and cost estimates. And finally, we wanted to come up with our list of recommendations with strategic planning and prioritizing these recommendations. So I wanted to start with the roadway safety review for the City of Johnston, which was the first step of the network safety screening. Here we can see a heat map of crashes in the City of Johnston in the last 5 years. And we can see that there is a couple of high density hotspots along Mulhay Road and Northwest 86th Street, which is not surprising because these are these segments with the highest ADTs in the city. And so after that, we wanted to do a little deeper dive into the crash stats in Johnston. And so Johnston witnesses 190 crashes on its public roadways every year, 76% of which are property damage only. Unfortunately, there have been 2 fatal crashes on Johnston's roadways in the last 5 years. And so we do understand that improvements need to be made for the City of Johnston to align with the Vision Zero fatality in the future. If we look at historical data, though, and we look at the total crashes in the City of Johnston, if we neglect 2020, because we all understand that that was a unique year with COVID and volumes going down, if we locally look at 2018 to 2019, we can see that there was about 3% decline in total number of crashes. And then if we locally look at 2021 to 2022, we can also see about 3.8% of reduction in the crashes. So we'd like to think that the trends of the crashes in Johnston are heading in the right direction. But of course, that doesn't mean that we need to keep an eye and keep monitoring the traffic safety in the city of Johnston. Here we mapped the frequency of crashes as well as the PCR values from the Iowa DOT. So on the left, we can see a map with the intersections number of crashes in anything with a red circle that has 24 plus crashes. On the right, we can see the PCR values for the intersections, which is the potential for crash reduction. And we can see that anything that has a dark blue has a high PCR. So here on this slide, I wanted to highlight actually our two, go ahead. Yep, I wanted to highlight our two roundabouts because we in the city of Johnston, we take pride in our roundabouts. And so we were looking at these two roundabouts there, 100th Street and 70th and 62nd Street and 106. And we found that they had a high frequency of crashes, which sometimes isn't a big problem because you have to look at ADT2 and the geometry of that intersection. Then we looked at PCR values and we saw that they had also a high PCR value. And so we wanted to dive deeper in there and see what is going on at these two roundabouts. And since they are fairly new roundabouts, and we found out that for the roundabout of 100th and 70th, which was constructed in 2016, the safety review showed us that also, although there was 25 crashes in the last 5 years, 68% of these crashes were sideswipe crashes. There was no fatalities. And we also looked at historical data and we noticed that we had a spike in crashes in 2020. And we looked at volumes, historical volumes, which we had lower volumes that meant higher speeds. And there's proven research that if you design roundabouts a little bit bigger, over capacity, people will speed through them and then you will have more crashes. So we'd like to attribute seeing a blue at that roundabout to that. So we just wanted to look at it more in the future and investigate further, but that's why we think it's showing a high PCR value there. Another intersection that we wanted to look at was the Northwest 62nd and 106th Street. We dived deeper into that one. We looked at crash causes, and we saw that there was a lot of it driving in the pandemic, which we already explained that, and then there was some erratic driving. I'm not going to go deeper into this one. Moving on from the safety review, I'm going to talk a little bit about the public outreach efforts that we had. So we acknowledge that incorporating a public input component into the study is very important. We wanted to look at the data, but the data alone is not enough. So we wanted to hear from the residents about what they think is working and what is not working. So we held four public open house meetings this year from February to September, and we held 2 stakeholder meetings. And we also made it clear, we used multiple streaming and media services to make sure that all the residents are aware of tools to be involved with us in the study. Our 2 major tools were the traffic congestion survey and the map social mapping. For our traffic congestion survey, it involved 16 questions, asking all questions traffic related congestion, and we received 540 responses and 270 written in comments. For our map social input, it's basically an interactive map where they can drop off our predefined pins and they can see what they like, what they don't like, what problems are going on, and that range really from capacity issues to even lighting problems in neighborhoods, anything they wanted to talk about, traffic and safety related. So with that, here I wanted to share, there was a lot of data in the background, a lot of processing. I just wanted to share really a glimpse of the results that we came up with. Here on the right, we can see this is our map social results summary. We have categorized all the written and comment into 7 categories. Each had multiple categories, and we saw that driver expectancy came at the highest. I want to point out that the driver expectancy had subcategory in it that talked about non-infrastructure related concerns like driver behavior, compliance, and enforcement. On the left here, this was an answer to one of our questions, and I just wanted to show that the residents' answers aligned with the data that we have. So they said it's easier to drive on the weekend. Well, our data shows that on the weekend, the ADTs were 25 to 45 less. Here, this was an interesting finding that just proves that there is always going to be a love-hate relationship against roundabouts. So if you don't know Johnston really well, we have 3 corridors in Johnston that have at least 3 roundabouts within a 1 mile stretch. So we had some strong opinion, and we saw that 87% of the residents of the city of Johnston love roundabouts, and they see that they are safe to drive. The remainder, not so much. Here I am going to move to our traffic projections and operations. So I want to say that we looked at land use in the city of Johnston. Pretty much more than 80% of the city of Johnston has already been developed, but we looked at the Thrive 2040 plan, and that's where we came up with our trip generation. We used multiple of the previous study that either FOS has conducted or studies from different firms. We looked at all of that, and we came up with 47 trip generation zones. And our forecasting showed that there's anticipated 12K AM trips and 19K PM trips in the future, and that's 2045. So with that, we mapped our future ADTs, and we can here compare this to the map that I showed earlier, and we can see that we have a new bracket for ADTs that are higher than 25K. We can see that happening at the gate, the Merle-Hay gate, and we can see that other corridors shifted colors, and we see more volumes on the Johnston's network. We saw 2% traffic growth along Merle-Hay and 62nd, and about 1% along 86th Street. So with all that background and forecasting, we were ready to look at traffic operations. So we performed our capacity analysis, and we looked at level of services. And for that, we developed our V-Storm model. It was a fairly big model with 184 nodes, 890 links, and 1,800 plus paths. So it was a very big effort and very exciting to work on. For any existing or future or proposed roundabout analyses, we use SIDRA for that. And I am not going to dive into details on this, but these are our existing and future operations. If we look at the maps real quickly, we can see that the colors change. And we can see that some intersections deteriorate all the time. And in our future build, we can see some of the intersections that will rise to the top in terms of operation and will need to be addressed. Next, we identified that some of the intersections showed a subtle concern in terms of public input, in terms of safety, and in terms of operations. So those were categorized as a high-level review, and then some intersections rise to that top tier, which were the comprehensive review. And we had 24 intersections in that tier. And for these intersections, we performed a very comprehensive review for each intersection. Operations, historical crashes, historical volumes, public input, city assessment, and everything. So here, I will share one. We did 24. So for the sake of time, I just wanted to go over one of the intersections that we did that for and how that all came together. This is the intersection of Merle-Hay Road and Northwest 70th Street. We looked at this intersection deeply. We looked at what the public input said. We saw a lot of safety-related concerns. We looked at severity of crashes, history of crashes, public input. We noticed that there's 30% plus non-collision crashes, and that indicates that there's driver confusion at this intersection. And we looked at operations, and we saw that it will fail in the future. So with that, we wanted to look at different alternatives and investigate these 3 options that you see on the screen. So first, we wanted to see if we add a northbound through and a southbound through lanes, how it would operate. And we saw it would operate at level of service C in the future, which is better than what we have currently. We wanted to consider reducing the size of the intersection or a multi-lane roundabout there, which we found to operate at level of service B in the future. Much better than one with the current geometry. So this is just an example of what we did at each intersection. And with that, after we finalized all of these analyses, we came up with 24 total recommendations, which were categorized to corridor intersection geometric improvements or any existing traffic signals that we wanted to improve their operations, policy, procedure, or any specific location or policy that we wanted to see investigated and explored further. This is the last thing that we did after we have our recommendations. We wanted to do strategic planning and guide the city of Johnston on how to prioritize these transportation improvement recommendations. So in addition to our results, which are operations, frequency, PCR, public input, we added 2 more categories that we wanted to go into our strategic planning, which are implementation challenges, but also the city planning. So the city of Johnston has a CIP, and we wanted their assessment on how this proposed improvement align with their CIP in terms of planned payment management plan or any upcoming infrastructure or utility project. So with that here, we can see that, for example, this is the map where we have our corridor intersection geometric improvement recommendations. We can see how they're spread around the city. And after our strategic planning, we can see how they're colored based on their urgency, so urgent to low. These here are existing traffic signal operations recommendations. These are existing signals. We want it coordinated, we wanted to add a phase, or we wanted to improve the operations. The final step after we did the strategic planning and identified all the proposed improvements as urgent or low, we wanted to apply the future build timeline. So we had done 2023, 2032, and 2045, and we wanted to apply that to develop an implementation plan. And so folks suggested that the implementation of these recommendations be completed in 4 phases: immediate, near term, midterm, and long term. And for example, the recommendations that ranked urgent fill in the immediate implementation plan. Let's see. So this here is an example of how it all came together. The recommended improvements. For example, this is Merle and 70th. We wanted to explore the different options. At this phase, any option that was not feasible was just left out. Here we recommend in the short term, which is a high priority recommendation, to add a northbound approach, to reconfigure the northbound approach and add pedestal mounted near side traffic signal heads. And we provided a concept for that as well as a cost. And we guided the city on when this needs to be done. The second long-term alternative was a dual lane roundabout. That was a medium priority since it was constrained by the build year. We didn't see that it was needed now, but will be needed in the future. That's a midterm implementation. And then we provided a concept, layout, and a cost for this improvement. Another example here is 86th and 62nd Street. And for this intersection, we recommended positive eastbound and westbound offset left turn lanes with a medium priority, and we provided concept and cost for that one. And so you get the trend. We did this for all the intersections in the study. Although I did not touch base on corridors reviews, but we actually did that too. For the sake of time, I couldn't cover that, but here's an example of one of the corridors that we propose an improvement for. This is 86 Northwest 86th Street, and we saw that there's a high priority to coordinate the traffic signals along this corridor. Another corridor here, the last one. This is the medium priority improvement, and we propose a road diet along Northwest 86th Street for this stretch by restriping the pavement and converting the 4 lanes to 3 lanes. And so this was based on all the comprehensive analysis that we did, and also the existing and forecasted ADTs that we saw are even in the future less than 10K along this corridor. So we saw that the city could really benefit from a road diet that would make it more walkable, more crossable, safer, and just improve the safety and reduce speeding overall. And I wanted to point out that since we are talking about a road diet along this stretch of 86th Street, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about a school that we have here. I'm not sure how we can point, but there's a school, and we did not say anything about schools, but schools are a very big piece for the city of Johnston's traffic. And so I wanted to say that along this corridor, during the school traffic drop-off and pickup, we see queues along the street all the way to the north from the school access all the way. And so there is something to be done there. And so the road diet is an option that the city and the school can consider to see if they can add a parking lane or a school, parents lane or whatever. And so here we have a picture of how the lanes actually look like during drop off or pickup. And since we're talking about that, I just wanted to say that we received overwhelming comments from in the survey and the public input about the schools. It was amongst the greatest traffic concerns, but we decided that the schools are to be studied differently and amend them to the study. So right now we are doing field observation studies to observe all the traffic drop-offs and pickups and observe any school operations, any instances where pickup or drop-off is happening at places where it should not. And from that, we will be able to draw supplemental conclusions and recommendations to aid the study. So that's why we did not talk about schools at all earlier. With that, I wanted to say that our final deliverable will be a traffic study, final report, and it will be used by the City of Johnston as an input to their CIP process. It's currently still a draft, but it will be published by the City of Johnston. So. Did I fly through it? Was it fast? Yeah. So for the street light data, we purchased the 150 zones, and with that, they give you all historical data from whenever they started. And I can't remember when was that, but I know we had historical data from back 2010 or 2012. So we had all that historical data. So what we did for this is we used our October. So we performed this study in 2023. We used the October turning movement counts for streetlight. I'm not sure if you know, but just starting 2019, streetlight started actually providing turning movement counts. In the past, they would not provide turning movement counts. They would just provide volumes, and then you'll have to average and get existing conditions. But for this study, we used the October 2022 turning movement counts. So, yep. Yes. Let's go back here. So we did not look at a single lane roundabout there, but I know that from operations, it seems that the 2-lane roundabout is what's carrying the operations. I'm not sure if we go back. Like I did not analyze that, but I know it was 2-lane roundabout because the capacity and the volumes there asked for it. And then when the volumes went down during COVID, that's why we witnessed the crashes. And yes. Yeah, that's true. And I know in the city of Johnston, we've done that in the past. Like we'd recommend 1-lane roundabout, but like allow for future expansion in the future. We've done that multiple times in the city of Johnston, that's for sure. But yeah, that's true.
Could be wide,
Yes.
that far in detail.
Yep.
of the intersection.
Yes, we did review the geometry of the intersection. We looked at each at each crash, and we saw what was exactly happening. If it's a side swipe, well, is there an issue with the slip lane here? Is that what it happened? So we looked at all of that when we did that comprehensive review for each intersection.
Other thing, so when you did your trip generation, you actually took the land use and did you assign trips to corridors or did you just kind of come up with an overall growth of 2% a year?
No, we assigned. We did not do growth. We assigned trips to corridor. We did distribution and paths, and we actually filled it up pretty much that we did not need to grow the background traffic because we actually generated trip zones for pretty much every single empty parcel in the city and assigned it to the network. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, let's go with about it, coming back at, quarter to the hour. So, right at around 2:45, and we'll pick it back up. Okay.
Like, I have plans for my
Oh, great.
Other people around here think it's like that. And like that school, like that looks like mine, yeah, but like my kids. And I don't know, yeah, it's that way for like. Yeah. Oh, geez. All right. Thank you. Oh, but I'll never get caught by much. They got the question. No.
There you go. Yep. Yep. Yep, it has a pointer and all that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That is my agenda.
I'm doing high school outreach job. I'm going to present at Ace, so.
Okay.
To a bunch of high schools. I'm doing my part in outreach, trying to get more.
Outstanding.
Not just missing.
I,
There you go. We got this out of the way. Yes. John, you need more time, getting the fiber reel out of the way that we saved lives today.
okay.
Did you see that email, Chad?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I saw it come in last night. Like, oh, can we get the election?
Yeah, but
What?
That's really the only thing that's good. You've done that before. Yeah.
Well,
Unless we use it.
So if you haven't already, grab your staffs and we'll start back up in about a minute.
Again, yeah.
Start motioning towards your seat, grabbing any snacks along the way that you like. And any beverages that you need to keep away from the balance of the atmosphere. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the afternoon, the next session in the afternoon. So our next speaker comes to us from a community to the south. He is a distinguished individual. Oh, it's me. Again, my name's John Davis, and this is part of my day job. I'm the city traffic engineer for Des Moines, Iowa. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit or give you some overview and a brief summary of our Vision Zero Transportation Safety Action Plan. And I'll try to do it in whatever time I'm supposed to get done, which was a minute ago. But in that, transportation planning in the city of Des Moines was really formalized and crystallized in our first transportation master plan, which was adopted in 2018. Part of that plan, which we call Move DSM, updated the complete streets policy that was adopted in 2007, as well as it also identified a project development process for the capital improvement program to reflect the goals and the objectives for complete streets. As part of that effort, the question was asked, how safe are our streets? And look, at the time of the study, which was 2012 to 2016, we were averaging around 156 people being killed or seriously injured in crashes that are traffic related each year in Des Moines. And we also found that there was a predominant or a disproportional amount that were bicycling or walking that were being affected. Furthermore, we found that a disproportionate amount of the crashes were occurring that involved people getting killed on 4-lane streets that did not have medians or any other type of separation between vehicles traveling in opposite directions. So building on that traffic study or that traffic safety element in the master plan, we started down the Vision Zero Transportation Safety Action Plan path. This plan was adopted by our city council in June of this year, along with a resolution committing ourselves to achieving zero traffic-related fatalities and reducing serious injuries by the year 2040. Our safety plan provides a summary of the public engagement process that we undertook to develop the plan. It shows the crash analyses and also the identified high injury network resulting from that crash analysis. As I mentioned, it's a path forward to a target year of 2040, has specific and measurable actions and steps in 5 focus areas, and provides project prioritization based on need and safety impact. It also has an element to annually review the progress that has been made and to reaffirm and revise or even discontinue any action items that might have been listed in that initial 5-year look at the action plan. So the basis of the plan, like a lot of Vision Zero or most of the Vision Zero action plans across the United States and elsewhere, is the safe system approach. This is a wheel that you can find on Federal Highway Administration or US DOT's websites. And this is a principled approach that looks considers that death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Humans make mistakes and are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared in terms of safety. Not only users, designers, operators, and policymakers. Safety needs to be proactive and redundancy is crucial. The safe system approach looks at the elements or through lenses of from the people standpoint, safe people, safe vehicles, safe speeds, speed management, and also roadway design through safe roads, that element, And finally, the post-crash care. Taking those elements and principles, this is what that informed the plan focus areas that we have for the Des Moines plan. Excuse me, looking at policies, programs, processes, and partnerships, design elements, infrastructure, the safe streets for everyone, management of speeds through in our safe speeds focus area, creating a culture of safety and safe street behaviors, and then improvement of data and transparency. This is just a snapshot of what our high injury network looks like. I know you maybe you can't read this from the far back. If you can't read it from the up front, I would invite you to see your ophthalmologist later. But it does identify those segments that are the greatest crash risk in Des Moines. It was done through a sliding window analysis by weighing the severity of crashes and the density of crashes to identify these segments or corridors. Based on that analysis, the feedback that we received from the public, as well as our own knowledge and input from a staff level, we developed implementation steps. And I'll just walk through these real quickly. So we've identified these into by fiscal year to provide an implementation timeline. Here we've highlighted the first 2 fiscal years, being what we just completed in fiscal year 23 and now in 24. In total, there are 75 actions that we have. 12 we've identified as transformative steps. These are steps, for example, having an adopted plan. You got to start someplace, and so that kind of is our definitive transformational step. But other steps such as funding, staffing, those are steps that really will help move the needle significantly. 6 of those steps are shown in fiscal year 24. And just as a reminder, our fiscal year is a July 1st to end of the next June year. So we coincide with the federal fiscal year as well as the state. So far to date, these are the steps that we've completed. One of those was transformative, which was the first one, which is adopting a Vision Zero resolution and action plan. We've also, and this was our grand announcement, so this was our press release, so that got another step checked off. But we also submitted a grant application for the Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant program. And I'll touch on that in just a little bit. So under the focus area of policies, programs, processes, and partnerships, these are some of the steps that are primarily focused to happen or continue or be initiated in fiscal year 24. You see we've got 3 of them we've completed, 2 of them we have in progress, staffing and funding. We also are looking this year to establish some sort of a technical advisory group or a steering committee. We'll be conducting a joint, and hopefully that group will conduct joint annual meetings we have a transportation safety committee that's appointed by our council. And then an annual review of our Vision Zero successes and challenges towards the end of the year, and then incorporating by reference the action plan into our overall plans of Plan DSM and Move DSM. As you can see, a lot of things in Des Moines is something DSM. Additionally, we're looking to ensure or incorporate countermeasures of safety into SUDAS through our input of our representatives to that group or that process. And we'll be working with Iowa DOT and the MPO to look at the 5-year fatality projections so that it doesn't appear that we're actually estimating an increase in fatalities. And then, of course, we'll be coordinating with the Des Moines MPO, which received a application grant to develop a comprehensive traffic safety plan for the MPO and all the member agencies. And that steering committee will be the Transportation Technical Committee, which we are a member of. Here's a few more in the policy, programs, processes, access or focus area, where particularly our Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant. We're looking at 5 corridors. If you know the Des Moines area, we have Euclid Avenue, Douglas Avenue. They're kind of a very similar corridor. They changed names. It's US 6. Forest Avenue over around the Drake University area. Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway corridor. This is the north-south component that runs from really Fleur Drive or the river up to Hickman, almost Hickman area, and then the Southeast 14th Street corridor. In particular, Maury Street, which unfortunately had this designation of being, if not the worst, one of the top 3 in crashes for its intersection type in the state. We like to be first in the state, but not in this way. The beauty of all these projects were selected because they are in our CIP. We have money programmed. There is design already underway. We have vetted these with council. We've had some public engagement. Most had public engagement to some degree or another. So the match that we required when we get this award, I'm thinking positive here, that is already programmed. So that's how, and then we're looking at construction dollars here. So was our first foray into the implementation grant application. And hopefully we'll learn and we'll be really excited in the next month and a half, roughly, is when we expect to hear the notice. As far as Safe Streets for everyone, this is looking at the design, the infrastructure. Here, we've created a project sheet. That's what we call them for our CIP. And we hope that is included in our upcoming budget that will provide the ability for us to implement low-cost, high-impact strategies at intersections or locations. One of the strategies that we've just implemented in the last week and a half, and I'm not sure how many of you that have driven in the Des Moines area have recognized these, but we have now reflective strips at 5 locations on traffic signal backplates. A reporter from Axios won the award. We're not sure what he actually won. I offered him Halloween candy for recognizing this, and we've already been interviewed or contacted from the media. So we identified the five locations, unfortunately, that have had the highest propensity for red light running or right angle crashes related that would be this countermeasure would likely solve. And unfortunately, one of those locations also has red light running cameras. So the camera located on the right or the correct approach. But so we have gotten that out. We're also developing a policy for leading pedestrian intervals related to traffic signal timing. Other aspects, we're looking to incorporate Safe Streets approach principles into all of our projects at all of our locations as they arise in the CIP, and also continuing to build out our infrastructure for bikes as well as pedestrians and filling those gaps. Another aspect that in terms of safe speeds that we are implementing is we have a couple locations already, and we look to standardize this and put more out, which are speed feedback signs that are connected with our school zones. And we're in discussions with our colleagues in the police department to talk about automated street cameras for enforcement on high injury network corridors as well as near schools. You know, obviously this is a topic that gets a lot of play in our legislature every year. Hopefully they will be able to convince them to retain it as a good tool to enhance safety. In terms of safety and safe street behaviors, these are a couple of the items that we're looking at this year. An online pledge form so we can engage the public, and also potentially look at the insurance industry that is prevalent in the Des Moines area and partnering with them to see how we can, or how they might be able to provide some incentive programs for safe drivers, or at least publicize those even more. And then data and transparency. This is important. You want to make decisions based on data. We're trying to get away from the approach that, oh, this is a terrible intersection. Well, I can tell you, I've looked at a lot of intersections that the public says is a death trap, and you look at it and people are not having crashes there. Maybe it's because people think it's so unsafe, they exercise a little bit of caution, but we want to make our decisions based on data and be more data driven. And finally, we've created a data dashboard that is on our Vision Zero webpage. This is what it looks like. It is live right now. We're probably going to be tweaking it a little bit. And this provides just a summary of the data that we use to create the report, the action plan. We'll be updating this in concert with the effort that the MPO is doing to bring in the years 22. And hopefully, I think by the time we get into the analysis, or they get into that project, we'll be able to bring in 2023 data as well. And so the 86 people killed, 468 seriously injured is over that time frame of 2017 to 2021. That's not just for one. But the real message that I try to get out about Vision Zero, the Transportation Safety Action Plan, is that we're all in it together. It's just not the engineering community. It's just not the planners. It's the policymakers. It's the folks that sit on our Planning and Zoning Commission. It's the folks that sit on the dais that are our elected officials, as well as the users and the citizens and the visitors to the Des Moines area. Everybody's in it together, and we need to work as a team. And also, it's a cycle. You identify something, you hope people react to it in a positive fashion. If they don't, then you make adjustments. So it's that plan, do, check, act type of cycle that you may have been familiar with some quality improvement programs. So with that, that's my contact information if you want to talk to me about Vision Zero, traffic and transportation issues. It's amazingly similar to the ITE. Just please separate it out in the subject matter. And at that, I'll take any questions that you might have. Yes. Well, as far as, I guess I'll answer the pledge, they all voted for the resolution in the affirmative. One of the things that, and we have noticed since we've gone through this process, that their talk has changed a little bit in that they're now using the term high injury network. So if it's on the high injury network, that's favorable to them, and they will use that as, or they'll ask the question, is this project, because we have check-ins with them in the process, in our project development before we take things out to the public. And many times they will look, or if it's not already shown, and we've got a form that matches up the parameters for Move DSM, and part of that includes high injury network. But if they don't hear that, many times now they are asking, is this on the high injury network? Or I see this is on the high injury network. What else do you have in mind? Or try that correlation. It's a positive reaction from them, but the proof will be in the pudding. And what's the flavor for the next election cycle, which starts tomorrow? Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
crossing midline. Curious if any of this has questions. Usage of
Yeah, I think what you're asking is are we going to have an educational component to try to reinforce these, basically? So yes, part of that's a future objective or implementation step. We really need to have that additional new staff person to come in. This is a unique plan, is I call it a middle out. It's really a staff initiative. And in all honesty, I saw that if you leave money alone in a CIP and you don't utilize it, it will find its way into another project. And my concern was I was starting to see this money that had been identified in transportation planning efforts starting to inch towards or being pulled towards other projects. And it goes back from my operational days when if with the city of Indianapolis, if I didn't spend my money by the end of the fiscal year or the calendar year, it ended up becoming chuck hole fill. So, and that was, traffic signal sign money is now asphalt that is patch money and pays for that. So we started the safety effort more as a staff initiative. It wasn't like in a lot of communities, if you look at their history, it is an elected official stood up, planted their safety flag in the ground and said, going forward, we're going to deal with traffic safety. We're going to deal with fatalities, and we're going to enhance safety. And we're going to have this Vision Zero, this traffic safety plan. Or you see a groundswell coming from the grassroots effort. We really didn't see that. We had obviously council members that were favorable to it, but we really didn't have anyone in other communities that we've seen around the United States really stand up and say, yes, I saw this at the National League of Cities meeting or the mayor's meeting, and I want to do this. I really want to move forward. I want to make this a priority. As a similar city size that we have is up in Madison, Wisconsin. Their mayor is very proactive safety and really pushed and that effort in that community. We didn't see that, but by virtue of that, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. And from our standpoint, it's really getting the funding. And we do have the support of our council, but it's a matter of getting our other partners involved to get that message out so that people do recognize that, yes, if I took a few more steps down to the device that has traffic signals attached to it and will stop vehicles, then I can safely get across the street. And also looking at trying to identify those locations where maybe we need to put something in there because there's kind of a desert effect to a certain degree for safe crossings. So
savings or anything they might have from other projects that's and same thing. Are you allowed to do like group project selections for solicitations, or do you have to do project by project?
right now, most of our projects are identified in our CIP as defined projects. So we're working, and a fair amount of that is predicated on stormwater management, tearing up a lot of streets, and so we're able to put back things on top that make sense and help from a safety standpoint and a complete street standpoint. We're hopeful that we can get to a budgeting from the city standpoint of having more, I'll call it programmatic stuff. but we're working it. We have some of that in our we can afford that kind of in our operating, but our operating budget is staying really flat. In fact, for the next fiscal year, finance has said we want it to be no increase, and we're scratching our head trying, okay, polls for signs went up 35 to 50%. There is something called inflation. We read about it. Do we stick our head in the sand? So it's grappling with some of those realities and working through and trying to increase the awareness. Yep. So any other questions in the back? In this case, we have 5 locations. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey. We have 5 locations, and we are trying out different manufacturers. And we added the back plates that come with the tape already on them. So some of them are the ones that are already put together. Some are you have to kind of assemble. And it's a pilot project. We're not only we're measuring the time it takes to install, but also looking at the effectiveness, and we'll revisit our crash statistics in about 6 months or so, see which way we want to go. But I think long term, we're going to have it throughout, and we'll figure out how to do that either through new construction monies and then ultimately through replacement. But it's just a matter of which way do we want to go right now. And we may look at the tape. That was one of the options. The challenge is some of the back panels up there right now are such poor. They've been up there so long that they've oxidized and corroded to the point where the tape probably wouldn't stick too long. So any last questions in the back? Well, we don't have back plates on our pole mounts, but that's something that we are considering doing. It's one of those unique things that I found in my travels, is that every state or jurisdiction has a different view on some of these things. And when you ask why, well, because it's always been that way. So any last questions? All right, thank you very much. And now we'll move on to our next, which is Highway Safety Manual, and Dan. There you go. That works if you want it. Oh, I was trying to get you done. There you go.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Cook. I'm a traffic engineer in our Des Moines, Iowa office. I can get through these slides pretty good, but I'm out of curiosity, how many people have used the highway safety manual in here? Excellent. So I make sure my audience a little better. So I'm going to be talking about the development of the proposed AASHTO Highway Safety Manual, 2nd edition. This is being conducted as part of NCHRP Project 17-71A. Texas A&M Transportation Institute's leading this project. HDR is a subcontractor on the project, along with Exponent, Harwood Road Safety LLC, Mr. Breland C. Gowan, and Ogle Research LLC. So the objective of this project is to complete the work that was actually originally initiated as part of NCHRP Project 17-71 to develop and prepare a proposed HSM2 in a format suitable for adoption as an AASHTO publication. So the HSM2, it'll expand upon the methodologies in the HSM1. And for those that aren't as familiar with the Highway Safety Manual, the first edition came out in 2010, and then there was a supplemental about freeway predictive methodologies that came out in 2014. So that's 13 years ago. A lot has happened in both the research since then, which we're incorporating new models and research that have been completed since that publication date in 2010. Also, it will modify practices based on user experiences and needs. So I want to go through and outline some of the what's going to be the HSM2 and what's new in it. Most of us are practitioners in here, so I think people would be a little curious to see how does this affect us. Might be a little hard to read in the back of the room, but the Highway Safety Manual, the first edition, along with the second edition, is split up into 4 major parts. The first part, Part A, is safety fundamentals. That still remains relatively unchanged. However, the human factors chapter has been rewritten and is a lot more robust than the first edition. There's also going to be a new chapter on pedestrian and bicycle safety in that fundamentals part. And then in Part B, the roadway safety management process, it'll still have those 6 main chapters that are the components of the safety management process, but it's also going to include a new step, area-wide planning, which is based on work done in Project 17-81. That's going to be the new Chapter 5. It's basically looking at macro level safety planning. So rather than looking at intersections and roadway segments, taking a step back and looking at jurisdictions, metro areas, census block level type safety analyses. There's also going to be a new chapter on systemic safety management as well. And then Part C might be the part that most people are familiar with. This is the predictive methods. This is where the safety performance functions are, the adjustment factors for those crash prediction models. There's going to be a lot of new models added to this section. There's going to be a new chapter in the beginning of Part C that's going to be just talking about developing, calibrating, and using safety performance functions and crash prediction models. And lastly, in Part D, which is about crash modification factors, there's going to be 2 new chapters, one on selecting crash modification factors and a chapter on applying crash modification factors. Again, I talk about all that research that has been conducted. A lot of this is NCHRP funded research that has developed new models or new new research that is being pulled into this second edition of the Highway Safety Manual. So I'm going to go through in a little more detail on the updates to the Part C predictive methods. So again, for folks that may not be as familiar with the Highway Safety Manual, Part C is the predictive methods contain safety performance functions, adjustment factors that a lot of times we use to, if we're concepting a project or we're looking at alternatives, we might be curious to see, okay, if I don't do anything to this roadway, what kind of crashes am I going to see in the future? Or if I do alternative 1 or alternative 2, what are the expected crashes or predicted crashes that I may see on this roadway? So then you can compare the alternatives. So that's what Part C is all about. And I'm going to step through each one of the chapters and talk about what are some of the new models that are being added. And for those that are familiar with the methods, you probably have run into roadblocks where you're like, okay, I want to put in a roundabout. Oh, but there's no safety performance function for roundabouts. Or I want to do this other thing. Oh, no, I can't. There's no model for that in the Highway Safety Manual. So there's a lot of new facility types that are going to be added. So for this is the predictive method for rural 2-lane, 2-way roadways. Previously, there were models for 2-lane undivided roadway segments, as well as 3 different intersection types. But new intersection models that are being added include 3-leg signal control, roundabouts, both 3-leg and 4-leg, single lane and 2-lane roundabouts. There will also be a model for 4-leg always stop control being added. And then lastly, an intersection type that I think you're explaining is a 3-leg turning intersection, which isn't as common in Iowa. These are a lot more common, especially in the eastern United States. This is just an example of one where you have the major roadway turns at the intersection, so you don't have any stop control on that roadway, but you have one on this approach here, which appears like it should be on the major roadway, but it's not. And then I'll go back a slide. Another thing that's being added throughout the Part C predictive methods are new methodologies on predicting crashes for pedestrian and bicycles. So that's some of the superscripts that you'll see through here. And I don't think we have the time to go through and talk about how this is going to be applied to each one of the models, but there's going to be a lot more added in throughout Part C on predicting pedestrian and bicycle crashes as well. So the next chapter is on predictive methods for rural multi-lane highways. For the segments remain relatively unchanged. You just have your 4-lane undivided and divided rural segments, but for intersections, we'll have a new model for 3-leg signal control, as well as models for the 3-leg and 4-leg roundabouts, both single lane and 2-lane. And then chapter 16, which is predictive methods for urban and suburban arterials. This is the largest chapter of all. I mean, it has a lot of stuff, and it's going to have a lot of stuff added to it as well. So for roadway segments in the current HSM, you can predict crashes for 5 different arterial types: 2-lane undivided, 3-lane, 4-lane undivided, 4-lane divided, and 5-lane. Those 3-lane and 5 lanes with the 2-way left turn. But then there's also going to be new models added for even larger roadway types: 6 lanes, 7-lane with 2-way left turn lane, 8-lane divided roadways, as well as 1-way streets: 2-lane, 3-lane, and 4-lane. And then these urban and suburban models, also, most of them have the pedestrian and bicycle predictive component as well. Because, I mean, if you think about the statistical modeling that went into this, there's just a lot more of those types of crashes occurring on these types of roadways. We're able to come up with statistically significant models for pedestrian and bicycle crashes. So for intersections, and I do have some pictures as well to follow up because it's kind of hard to see. So if we look at the 3-leg intersections, previously in the current HSM, we have a model for minor road stop control and signal control for 3-leg intersections. And this is assuming that both roadways are 2-way operations and with 5 or fewer lanes. So we're adding in models that enhance that, where we're looking at those types of intersections, but 6 or more lanes. We'll also have models for if you have an intersection, both minor road stop control or signal between 2 1-way streets, or a 1-way street and a 2-way street. We'll also have, again, that turning intersection that I showed on picture. This is the same type of intersection, but more in an urban environment. We'll have a model for that. There's also going to be models for all-way stop control, 3-leg intersections, as well as high-speed minor road stop control and high-speed signalized intersections. And the high speed has to do with roadways that have a posted speed limit above 45 miles per hour. So we're seeing a little different trends in predicted crash frequency at those kind of intersections. And then, of course, roundabouts, single lane and 2-lane roundabouts. So a lot of those new models I talked about also apply to the 4-leg intersections. We don't have to go through those in detail. The 4-leg intersections, though, they don't include that turning intersection that I showed with the picture. There are intersections that are like this where you have a 4th leg, but we weren't able, or the research that went into this wasn't able to develop a model for that type of intersection configuration. And then there's also a model for 5-leg signalized intersections, which I did find a picture of one to include. This is in Pennsylvania. Now we move into the freeway methods. This is chapter 17, predictive method for freeways. So this came out in 2014. It will remain relatively unchanged, except for the fact on urban freeways, it's going to include the safety effects of part-time shoulder use, the PTSU stands for, as well as high occupancy vehicle lanes and high occupancy toll lanes. And then a predictive method for ramps and ramp terminals. Again, remain relatively unchanged, except there's going to be a couple more ramp terminal types that will be added. One is the single point diamond interchange or single point urban interchange. Jim, this one should look familiar. Eric, yeah, in West Des Moines. So this model, a lot of the other models for ramp terminals look at the terminals as individual intersections. Well, this model looks at the entire intersection as one entity, hence single point. And then a tight diamond interchange. These are, you might see these a lot more in Texas. We have some in Iowa as well, but it's where you have those ramp terminals that are squeezed in really tight next to the freeway, and it really does function as one intersection. There's a model for that as well. All right, so talk a little bit about schedule. You're probably wondering, when is this going to come out? So we just finished developing the draft project deliverables, including a draft of the second edition of the Highway Safety Manual at the end of July of this year. There's a couple chapters that have, since July, have been lagging a little bit behind. Those have also been submitted. So there's the NCHRP project panel, but then there's also stakeholders as well from state DOTs that are reviewing these, the whole draft HSM2. We're going to have a workshop in Washington, D.C. with state DOT stakeholders and the project panel to go over some final fatal flaw comments or very high level comments about the manual in general. And that's going to be the end of this month. And so the plan is in early 2024, have that proposed HSM2 ready to be submitted then to AASHTO so that they can do their review, their balloting, and then eventually publication. And that's timeline for that is to be determined. But hopefully, let's say 2025. So with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Doesn't seem like it'd be a very good virtual. Like hands-on. Works out.
Yeah, so I believe that there's a NCHRP project that may be coming out this year, or it's already happening. That's going to be developing training materials that go along with the HSM2. I mean, they can't really start with the training materials until we have the proposed edition finished, but there will be that project developing those materials for educational purposes. Yeah, and that's a good question, and that may be part of the NCHRP project that I'm talking about, the developing educational materials. One product that people may have used is IHSDM, the Interactive Highway, blah, blah, blah. So FHWA is sunsetting that program, which is an unfortunate thing because that implements a lot of the models. However, there are commonly used software vendors that are coming in behind that and developing their own tools. And state DOTs have also developed their own custom tools as well. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Thought it was awkward presenting to myself. I'll cover it though. All right, so our next presentation is on speed management with it's the Chris and Skylar show. All right.
Thank you. So I realize we're already behind time. I could just say goodbye and go to break, but I'm not going to do that. I will try and go through this quickly. So I wanted to provide a little bit of background. In the just over 2 years that I've been in my current position, setting of speed limits is one of those fun things I get to do. As you probably might guess, it can turn controversial and political pretty quickly. But I digress. So the DOT does have authority to set the speed limits on primary road extensions, which are basically those state highways that run through cities, in addition to obviously all the other state highways and interstates within the state. So when it comes to setting speed limits in the city, it is collaborative, although Iowa code does give the DOT the authority to set the speed limits. Obviously, we're not going to go in and set a speed limit that the city doesn't agree with. Ultimately, they need to pass an ordinance to make sure that that speed limit can be enforced, and the city can receive the proceeds from any fines. So one thing I have come to learn is that it takes a while for us to turn around our speed studies. For one, we have one person doing them, and that person has to go physically visit the site, take his laser gun, sit and collect, hundreds of speeds shooting at vehicles. So it takes us time. This isn't something that we are proactive about, and we're not going out and updating speed limits just as we have time. For one thing, we don't have time, but really we're going out and conducting speed studies as requested. When a city comes forward and has a concern, usually that concern being speeding. So yeah, first bullet here. Historically, like probably almost everybody else, every other jurisdiction in the state, we relied on 85th percentile speeds to determine what we're going to set as the posted speed limit. And I'd say that's pretty common probably across the entire US. But we run into a conundrum then when we go out and we collect speeds, and our 85th percentile speeds end up being higher than the existing posted speed limit. And this is not uncommon. So we are left with a couple choices, right? Should we raise the speed limit? We have done that successfully a couple times, but almost always that's a non-starter, especially because the city has come to us saying they have a concern with the speeds. So usually probably what we end up doing is keeping the speed limit the same. But there is this possibility of lowering it for quote unquote safety, right? But if we're going to consider doing that, how low should we go? How low can you go? Yeah, so to what? How low should we go? Just drop it by 5? That would be a common answer. So we have to take into consideration other factors that are present on the facility. But which ones? Which ones are most important? Which ones have the most impact on people's choice of speed? So I'm just going to take a little sidestep real quick and talk about safety. As other presenters have already kind of mentioned, we all have this shared goal of minimizing serious injury and fatality crashes on our roadways. We also want to keep in mind vulnerable road users. That's kind of an up and coming topic, and recognizing that speed kills, especially for those users, being that they're unprotected. And so we have this aspiration to manage our speeds, especially in the urban areas where those vulnerable road users are more prevalent. Lower speed limits have been shown to reduce crash frequency and severity. But the key here is setting lower speed limits that are credible, that they're low but not unreasonably low, so that people will still be encouraged to follow them. So as I've been kind of tossing around the idea of what to do, well, I'd say a lot of what I'm presenting on today was inspired by the publication of this NCHRP report 966. this goes a long way towards answering those questions that I kind of laid out just a minute ago. And based on the research, this is kind of a black box, but I mean, it's a good place to start, I would say. The way that it suggests speed limits is a combination of considering roadway context, the type of roadway, obviously the type of speeds that are out there, the operating speeds, and then considering safety variables as well. So I'm going to just touch on those three things real quick. As far as roadway context and type, it does take into account these kind of new roadway classifications. Picture on the side here. So speed limit setting in a rural town, for example, would be different than setting a speed limit in the urban core. And then considering the different types of facilities, ranging from freeways all the way down to local streets. So the combination of those two goes into the model, and then it defines what they call speed limit setting groups. So it takes the combination of roadway type along the left column over there, and then context along the top row. And then you can see there are 4 different classifications or groups that they fall into. They kind of tried to group them according to similarities. For our use at the DOT, I'm really going to gray out most of that. I don't intend on using this tool for setting speed limits on freeways or in the urban core. We have very, very few of those situations on our state highways that run through cities. So we are only going to focus on the 3: developed, undeveloped, and full access. So there is still a need as part of this tool to determine what the speed distributions are. And the only variables of interest for this tool are the 85th percentile, which again, we've been collecting for years, but then also the 50th percentile. And so as everything gets input into the tool, there's really only, well, it depends on which one of those cells in the matrix you fall into, but there's really only 4 options that the tool would spit out as a recommended speed limit. And that would be the rounded to the closest 5-mile increment of 85th percentile speed, 85th percentile speed rounded down to the nearest 5 mile per hour, 50th percentile speed rounded to the closest 5 mile per hour increment, or 50th percentile speed rounded down to the nearest 5 mile per hour increment. This is just one example of those 3 or 4 groups that I refer to. So these are the safety variables, and I know that's going to be difficult for you all to read. But just for example, access density. If you have greater than 60 driveways or unsignalized intersections per mile, that triggers the tool to suggest to you that the speed limit, the suggested speed limit, should be to the closest 50th percentile. If, I'm not going to touch that one, but on street, no. If your crash experience for all crashes or just injury crashes, if your crash rate is high, medium, or low, then that would then spit out, well, let's say, then it would trigger to just use the closest 85th percentile. So for all these variables, you enter the condition at your location, and then whichever one triggers the lowest, that's the one you go with. And I apologize, that's really kind of clunky, but hopefully that makes sense. And I'm certainly around afterwards to answer any questions if anybody has any. So this has the potential to be very useful. At least it helps in maybe the DOT being more transparent and more consistent in how they set speed limits. Unfortunately, there are a lot of data inputs required, and I listed quite a few of them already. But there's still that need to go out and collect speeds in person, theoretically. And I'd like to use this, but I recognized, was it Wasama that mentioned streetlight? Yeah, I became aware of streetlight data and reached out to Intrans and said, hey, there's this new tool. How can we use it? Can we use it? So I reached out to them for help with modifying as much as necessary this spreadsheet tool for use in Iowa. Does anything need to change? We're not big on crash rates anymore at the DOT. We're talking about potential for crash reductions. So is there a way to implement that work in the setting of speed limits? And is there other ways that we can automate the collection of 85th percentile and 50th percentile speeds that we could then use to input into the tool? So that's my part, and I'm going to turn it over to Skylar.
Charts are all. When we're looking at these, we like, everybody is like 6 or 7 miles. The day the speeds and they underestimated. And the more why they're a little bit narrow. So, it's something we went into the first part was just percentile speed, 60 miles per hour. Each of these days represent a so if you see a lot of black dots, that means between the ATR and regional. Now we're trying to 50 and 35%. Now we're trying to say, okay, if we get a 40 miles per hour in the urban area, you can say that it's roughly 2 to 3 miles per hour. You can large scale and I guess just to know 20 miles per hour. So we're trying to think some of the data, verify, or validate all. And just for simplicity, get the mean, but it's the same concept. And we're folks to streamline is a lot easier for practitioners. Better solution for. And then last minute or two, I'll just quickly look at it. Talking about some other management. One is looking at purchasing radio data for about a year and a half, 2 years. And get around 7 million. The state, that we and one of the things which we haven't been able to previously, or one of the answers that works still in there. So we at how many of them passing by a given location. Speeding with speed limit, and to control. Down my word. Again, looking at this at a whole wide basis, where so click on see how many got a bunch of different sets. Go down or a given route or just one interesting insight that we had and we looked at it. One of the functions or things that people always nighttime will be on the roadway. There are a lot more speeding vehicles. Time period. One of the things that was notable was when we first looked at this, kind of valid, but we don't necessarily see that. Our peaks in non-compliance are follow our typical volume curves in the night. Whereas if we look at the mobile roadways, it's actually what we expect, where you see a lot more high speeding vehicles during the nighttime time period. And just to kind of give you a reference of how many in Kansas Valley, this one bar at Ames is happening for just a few days. So it's a large data set that we can look at different things across the state. And this is just a ranking, and then I'll get this just a little. Any questions?
With that regional data, do they ever tell you like, there are any demographics that would tell you that? Like, you know, like our a bunch of high school kids probably not driving the brand new cars that are coming.
And they don't tell us that, but I basically understand. You can see that. Percent of vehicles. Differences, but there were those differences. We don't even know what vehicle. Out there.
Related to that comment, I found it interesting when we were doing our safety corridor meetings with our local agency partners. I think with Woodbury County noted that they had a shortage of police vehicles available when they were purchasing their last cars. They bought online vehicles, which may have this type of system in them. And that's possibly one reason we saw those spikes overnight. They said they get a lot of calls overnight and their officers go flying down Highway 20 to get there.
Yep.
My question's actually a little bit for you on like, when you don't implement different speed reductions, are there design considerations made at the same time? And I ask just because sometimes we design the road for certain speeds, and they lower the speed limit. We don't always come back and alter the design, so it still feels like it should be driven a certain. We consider that, and
So probably not. I mean, I would say that our traffic techs out in the districts are having those more like one-on-one conversations with the cities, the people requesting the study, talking about what else can we do other than lowering the speed limit. You know, extra enforcement is always on the table. That's not always doable. But yeah, changing the feel of the roadway, constraining things a little bit, you know, reducing the number of lanes, all those things, those conversations are happening. But I think we just find like probably everywhere else, like a reluctance to want to do that. You know, that takes a lot of money. That takes a lot of time. Everybody wants to do the quick and easy fix, which I'll admit isn't necessarily a fix. Yeah.
In that same vein, we are. That is one of the things that we try to implement. So what's next, Chris? After kind of working with them, trying to think where you thinking you might go there?
Right. Yeah, so interestingly, I was thinking, oh, this is kind of the answer to all everything I'm looking for, right? I want to get in and use it more. I've only used it a little bit and haven't used it at all with the automated traffic speed data entrance collecting for us. But interestingly, NCHRP now has another project to update US Limits 2, basically US Limits 3, which is an expert system of speed limit setting. And so I'm almost kind of maybe going to drag my feet a little bit and see what they come out with, and then maybe weigh the two and see which one makes more sense. Maybe the US Limits 3 works better on the higher speed rural roadways, and then we can especially tool more in the urban areas, lower speed.
So it's like the city of Des Moines, we have our own speed limit setting practice and policy. If we would provide that data in our methodology, is that something the DOT would consider if we tested speed limit they reduced on a like on Euclid or?
Could we use that spreadsheet or you're going to do in another, we have 3 different methodologies that we use.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Tyler, just last one. Are we looking for, has the state and or entering looked at alternatives to veto out there? Have any of them actually shown validity and being comfortable enough?
One other. So we keep hearing. But I don't know any. Thing I would say is like. Normally the first. I expect it with somebody else. I know the OEM, and they don't. So there's going to be having copies. Not to provide. I think it's a matter of time. Going to debating. All right, let's go around the clock.
Obviously, we need to have something called the traffic professionals, transportation professionals time here. But what I think we might do is if you need to take a break, we'll take about 5 minutes and then we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes with the next group. Okay. All right.
I'm always last in an interview.
Traffic pole equipment for the district, Jerry Bollinger. Yes, I used to. Jerry is chairing the collegiate traffic pole organizing committee again for the district, I believe. Unless Meredith has found somebody else. Okay.
Did it open up there?
I haven't opened it yet, but just make sure here. Looks like it did.
Perfect.
All right, let me get this other one up.
Get everything you need from Josh.
Yes.
Yeah, we said, you know, like, we had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So, trying to be really responsive.
So it's just a proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
John, model, that was development.
The Ontario Ministry of Transport.
And
So
yeah,
Okay, so I'm curious, with those three, you explained here you use the credibility tool, but what's your differentiation between where you use estimates two and when you use the spreadsheet?
So we do all of them. And then there's the
Lowest.
That's what we're going. Yep.
Okay.
And
City of Charlotte, North Carolina was basically doing a similar, although they, at the time we last talked with them, they weren't using the 1776.
They weren't.
No, because it hadn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
We started incorporating that. And
it's almost, it's almost. Your permit too. Like, we get closer to it. But, you know, it's kind of the same.
Okay. Well, I think I'd probably like to talk with you.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's point. Yeah. Pretty much every.
Yeah.
That's this part.
Good luck for it. I'll run out the transportation. Yeah.
you can start moseying back to your seat, grabbing last snacks, and we'll get started.
Deliver the key.
Yeah.
All All right, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get started. So if you could wrap up your conversation, refresh your drink, and find your seat again. And we'll get started. Microphone is tied. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And as people get back in and Doug continues his campaign, and fortunately there are no babies present because he'd probably be kissing a few. So the next topic is regarding the 18th Street realignment project in the city of Des Moines. And Corey and Josh are our presenters, and I'll let them self-introduce.
So project started out with kind of expanded. It's not really a I'm going to get through background. And what this project kind of things for project. That study looked at outline things. So I was really looking to second thing and what is segment 3 is finished. Segment 1. Segment 2 there and kind of opportunity to look at exactly what some of the goals of wanted to improve what we call brand to so there's kind of where this so also several we also want to look to plan for future area looking at which I'll talk in a second and to it. So just going to go through kind of rapid fire the existing map of the area. And so, as I mentioned, Grand Avenue, one way west, and Locust Street. Thing is bus parking. So Central Campus. This is high school, but the kids that attend there Des Moines public school. So they're really only coming downtown. What you get is, at certain times of day, all these buses are, and so they kind of make do with. The second thing is to pick up and drop off for the, this, the building wasn't. So again, what you get, the, so it's kind of looking on how can we, third thing is, cross over inter. They're great if you're in a car, vehicle, or if you're on a bus. It's not very pleasant. Possibility, really kind of. The fourth thing is the Fluid Drive Bridge. Back before A Parkway, which is before that was built, by bridge was the, and so it's a bridge with lanes, a median, really narrow sidewalk. Now it only carries about, really overbuilt, a lot of amenities and water out. So how can we kind of connect? Another one of our big stakeholders is Dot-Dash Meredith. They do like Better Homes and Gardens magazines that you see, and so they have this kind of what they call a giant garden trowel. So this is their artwork out there, and they're very protective. So we can't really stop a roundabout in the middle of a road. So we're really working with stakeholders how we can improve the streets around there by we also look at the bike connectivity. There really is no this picture up here on the left is Ames Avenue, where implemented raised protected bike lanes. Grand Avenue here, right, westbound bike lane, but no east. And then to the south, you have Gray's Lake. And how can we connect all places of interest? And then the last thing is 19th Street. I mentioned, a lot of kids attend Central Campus just for class. Most get dropped off by a bus. Other kids drive, and they end up parking north of the campus, and they walk right down 19th. This is Ingersoll and 19th. And so a lot of them are actually having to cross here. So those are some of the existing conditions that we were working with, and I'll turn.
I took all of those existing conditions, traffic analysis. Central campus. So we use this as essentially flush out what are. So the first one we looked at maintaining. There we go. Maintaining the connectivity, but those alternatives. Check the one-way traffic, same as it is today until you get there and Grant. Fluor Drive essentially T, and the park is off. I do have it. On alternative two, we looked at the free flow route. MLK still over there. We looked at potentially leaving the same and then sending Fluor Drive still down Locust. Are made. Bikes are brought in, sidewalk areas and parks level. 18th Street on this one turns to two, northbound and southbound. So we did try a roundabout, and I did get in, and I did. They were still. But then we found out, yeah, touch the park. So we looked at trying to implement those safety features that were one-way stayed, but we set this up. Half overlaps. Safely. Four A eliminates connection and now turns south. Pulls it over there. Takes two-way at least through 17th Street, but opens up the green space. One of the things we heard, we don't have a safe place to bring the drills. They're doing the kids, they're stacking the kids. We looked at that and we said, well, how could we facilitate that? Bring a green space into all the solutions, safety. 4C took it a step farther and said, well, how do we maintain deliveries? They take a WBC coming down 5 feet, and they back up to that. Once every 6 months. We found out November of this year last month. This also brings right in, puts it up for two-way traffic and green goes two-way. Then we looked at, well, is Fluor Drive even needed? Eliminating that. What we found was the traffic line, but the bridge needed to be. So just the overall connect. Well, so what we ended up recommending was a variation of all of them and changing Grand and traffic, aligning Central Campus Street, traffic, bicycle that are going on, as well as bringing bike lanes onto maintaining bike lanes on areas on local entrance. What we found working with the city was we needed talking about recommendations were made for 19th Street, but it was still overall budget the project program. So existing and proposed for 18th Street, taking up the two-way. Nineteenth Street, it's a pretty tight corridor. It's only about 20 buses use 19th Street southbound to turn. But with 18th Street going two-way traffic, we realize that 19th traffic is blocked. 17th Street, as we said, it will get restriped from Ingersoll down to Locust and way through the whole, modifying all the traffic signals. Grand Avenue, this one we had to figure out how we're going to blend it. One-way to two-way conversions, past. Wait, that was a fun meeting with the school it was just need the story. Found a way to do with Locust and Flora Drive. So we set this up to meet the design speeds for cars, multimodal. Moving. The goal is to really drive to one or one vehicle lane each, as well as make improvements to pedestrians. But as we know, we can plan and implementation. The bridge is plan. We realize that making improvements Street is about what you're seeing. 18th Street, the bike lanes change. Also, when that bike facilities and the school. Well, like we said, that driveway was a lot slower than when we as well as set up for the future on Grand and more improvements. Point all the way down that. Also, the striping on Grand is changed at least to 30 bikes on the north side of the curve, the north side of the lane, the line right.
So just to kind of wrap up, you can see the kind of beige lines. Those are what our existing bike facilities are doing. So the green is what's proposed with this project. So it really does make some huge connections from a cycling standpoint, and it converts several blocks of streets from one way to two way. We touched a little bit to the east, so Grand and Locust from 15th Street to the west. With this project, will be converted to 2 lane. And so we're kind of in the middle of a study looking at Grand and Locust to the east. So from the river all the way to 15th Street, how can we convert to two-way traffic? And so after the first of the year, we'll have a recommendation for this and look to hopefully move into design of whatever is recommended. Yeah. I realize that was a lot of information and
Time for one question?
Where's the bike track?
There's currently actually a pedestrian crossing here, and there's the trail ties down to, so, you'd be able to ride a protected bike lane to here, get on the trail all the way down to here and go.
Thank you very much.
And just if you had any, this area right here is the test garden for Home and Gardens. So now we'll switch over and we'll talk about a riverfront demonstration project. And with Miss Jen McCoy. The middle.
I'm going to change structures just a little bit. So it's called demonstrate. So Riverfront Drive, one of the main. Minnesota State. So this project runs right along with the got all the way to just a lot. It's Riverfront Drive. Just north and south of there, 5 lanes. So, but this area along Old Town River, parking, I also wanted to later. So the project park, this quarter had been set traffic studies, and we were still a little bit at it. There's a lot of pedestrians, there's the parking, there's the trucks, and that were kind of fully what they were going to. So in 2021, it was approved by council to go to a road guide. That's probably good. Carrying that higher. So we laid this out, and the two distinct there was kind of it, and the engagement phase, and then it was broken down into kind of demonstrating and documenting. And so the first step was to create lay out your performance measures, gather that more data collection. At the same time, there's a parallel track of engaging the community through initial the community, getting our Old Town business or stakeholders that developed and connect, and then developing that through this demonstration. So the implementation plan, so you can see here on the upper part, we have kind of existing layout of what we had. They did have parking on the east side of the road, portions of the, and then this is what we had after. So what we were trying to model, this project goals were really to reduce lanes, to improve the pedestrian and sometimes road diets will add bicycle lanes. This one was at parking, pedestrian visitor. And so you really have to look at like how do we best demonstrate this benefit of additional, let's say, buffer, because ultimately the sidewalk, if the project were to be permanent, would be widened substantially again on both. So through conversations with it was decided that we should look to in our components in these buffer areas. So the big piece of it is they were for like their other pilot projects, and they just start to look medically which can actually drive movements from your business community. Another reason to not
So art is a really important. I believe they have like 16 different. So these are just kind of some of the examples. And so art is part of the city design plan, part of the plans, not going to be planners in this demonstration area as well. No one worked with their local. We kind of set a big note. Yeah. Or pieces of the stuff that artists or other do something in those. So here's an example. I just have a lot of pictures. You can see here is just kind of an aerial view of the road diet with those art components. But I think what really is telling is when you start to get down, especially here, you can start to see how that pedestrian experience, they really visually starts to become a connected area. They start to really feel what this feels like, where it used to be a narrow sidewalk right up. Starts to feel more of an experience. And this is one of the parklets that, along with art, and you can start work together there. The performance measures is another. We really wanted to make performance measures they were going to project on before and after, because otherwise, and that will. And the performance, find what was like, and make sure that data during the demonstration project. So, performance measures were to reduce speeds, increase compliance with pedestrian crossing, increase yield compliance, make sure travel trains were limit diversion, Second Street. And then look at reducing crashes and of course. So here's a summary of all of those kind of before and after measures. Those are performance measures fared. So before speeding, the speed limit was 30 miles an hour, 85th was 38, and 35 after the project. So the goal was to drop that by 3 miles an hour. We did meet this goal. Pedestrian crossings, this before we looked at the driver yield and the general comfort. We had one pedestrian before the demonstration project, and after we had 6 pedestrians. So we actually saw an increase in the number of people crossing. I want to talk a little about the speed data. So I think what's really telling is these high-end speeds. We dropped those high-end speeding. Travel times, you can see before versus after, we're really within a very similar to what they were before. And traffic diversions. I talked a little bit about those Second Street. So although Riverfront Drive volume went down by almost 1%, we only saw Second Street. So there are, I mentioned the most convenient. Don't ever read. It didn't divert. In your and then crashes. So we didn't have a lot of after. Really monitor. You really need more data. That our study basically about June at data. We didn't have a lot of data, but some trends that we really started to see for the 80% of the crashes were rear end, angle, side swipe, and left crashes. And over a third resulted in afterwards, 50% of the friends, but there were no right side, left turn. That shows me that the severity of practice were positively impacted with this. So public input kind of done and definitely making great company connected and involved. But then also the city had a very ambitious you hear that they came pretty close. Every Voice Mankato their own personal engagement site, and we had an online interaction. We were able to actually on the map was actually their comments, their thoughts, left that out. And then we had 3 different topics. We tried to engage with in this course. General themes, they liked that it was more. It felt the slides were those transitions. 4 or 5 year road diet and about that. There were some traffic backups. Unfortunately, I'd say if you're ever going to do a pilot project, you have to everything works. So that's not reality, but we had a signal. Everything was golden. The signal action failed. I cleaned this up. I'm doing it for the max down, and then main line, which you've now taken, is completely backing. And the city waited 6 weeks to come out and fix it. And so that was a little frustrating. It was right when we were closed. And yeah, you can imagine. So definitely making sure that if you're doing something and these oftentimes you do have maybe aging infrastructure in a pilot project. And they said they do pedestrians and then some of the truck movements at Rocks. Typical project. So I wanted to, in general, we did get some general comments I thought I would share with you. I think anytime you do projects, you have comments on, right? So we have, go back to 4 lanes, straight without curves, just post at 25 and enforce. So we're just talking about that. The traffic backup is frustrating when you're trying to get in a parking spot, when traffic backs up, the city needs to reach. And then we had on the other side, I traveled this several times a day. I've not noticed a huge in travel time. And I like this one. People are somehow causes an hour-long backup and talk about the road like it's street. You're on the oldest. Or you have to go 40 miles under 40 miles an hour for 5. More. And then this was my personal favorite. The designers of this atrocity described in this one-lane nightmare for eternity. So this project did get approved by council to move forward. Obviously, public input was one of those able to combine that with the really well-documented performance measures along with the input, and we use the input, right, as they're moving. Either that so that not all of it, but so the project will move in that yeah.
What methods?
So the speed data was through side-mounted radar, and then we also did travel time. We had, I think, 3 locations.
John, getting that ready. If any of you have seen this, we have a coffee table at your office. Make a few extra copies for your coffee table. And you'll get them out. Some of these, this was meant that we would always fence in order. Some great pictures of what. More. There's a stack of them out there. Is this the clicker? Stand over here.
And without further ado, I'm not sure you know this individual, Doug.
President Bush. Second one. 65-12 phone. It was published recently, August 8th. President Biden is now president, so that's right. This time period, the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 50 does not last. But it is possible here. So there's some things you need to know. And yeah, I'm going to start it quickly. I have 122 pages. Everybody just have it, and I'm going to read it. But I'm going to start with the easiest things, and then I'll go read. Easy, it's on-screen parking and transit stuff. We already do this for accessibility. Great, great picture. But the key is that this handicap parking based on street. Let's assume that the ramp is just right. Transit stations and on-street parking, if you drive out of Iowa in the Midwest, not a big deal. It's not really gonna look that much. I'm good at this. Controlled driveways. This one could be a problem. Change a little bit. Newer applications that haven't been, I see a lot of the community that I'm in, where you love any controlled driveway, so stop or yield, has to include those same edge treatments, crosswalk slopes that you see for, and it these two roadways per se. So, an example is exiting a public parks, sporting fields, all of those things that are don't look like intersections. If they're controlled, they have to comply with the standard one. So that is something that we probably do want to keep our eye on. Pedestrian access routes are required to be accessible. Now, I think we already know this. I'm pretty good at them is edge treatments, right? And that's the maintenance of the updated domes. I almost said too much for lunch. Updated domes, or some form of administrative when you're exiting the sidewalk or the trail or the path, the shared path. And there has to be separation, and it's a 24-inch minimum. So having the sidewalk right behind the curb is a no-no unless you have a barrier, and there has to be a raised barrier. So imagine if you were walking and you had visibility issues and you were using a cane. You have to be able to delineate that you're on the edge, so you have to have a barrier. Those are the sort of things that could come into some agencies. And this, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later. And I think this is one of the key points from my perspective, or at least from my reading of it, is alternate access must be maintained. So if you have a work zone or a construction site of any kind, or just something going on, you have to maintain reasonably accessible route. A similar standard to the one that's closed. So I love this picture. I think I've actually been through this intersection down in New Orleans. Regis Bank, you just saw some tape across a couple of holes. Closed. That's here. A long time ago, when I lived in Iowa City, they did something similar to this, and somebody literally into a hole. So they added yellow tape. So this is going to be a big thing for our industry, and I'll show you one example of your this. Roundabouts is taking a lot of the forest. Are going to have treatments at roundabouts, and you'll see there's a variety of different methods. We'll follow those. Especially multi-lane roundabouts, you have to. And the one that no, you're reading on all day talking on. And that's push buttons, right? Pedestrian push buttons or passive detection devices shall activate audible and vibrotactile walk indications. This includes doesn't count. Push button is all new and all. I'm going to read this. Also include but the key and why this no longer counts, that's to indicate the one. It is not. That's going to be a big. All new and altered. And again, this walking along. That is altered. I had this conversation with me last week. We were talking about this. They said, well, what if I just want to replace? If one fails, logically tell me if I put mixed technologies here, I'm going to use many problems with them. The logic isn't necessarily always related to federal rules. So that's going to have to be worked out. Right now, I haven't seen any good definitions of what. And maybe something will be different. And then the walking rule, again, the ones that we've been using don't work. They have to go to this. First of all, this one weighs a lot more. Right? Second of all, this one's hundreds and this one's thousands. That's going to be a big deal. And so keep that in mind. I have some good news. But that's something that we're going to have to deal with as we're going through this budget of things. And if you look at the program, that's some budgetary impacts in there. They lie. they just lie, right? The other thing I'm going to go back to this alternate access. If you're running one of these types of a plot, your intersection goes dark, it's not power. But you have to provide alternate access. How does that work? I don't know. Figure that out also. Also, the same thing with flashing. Intersection goes to flash, then press, what does you say when the intersection goes to flash? Automobiles turn off. The automobiles turn off. Flag says, literally says in the documentation, it has to stay off. Now, to their credit, they say it has to stay off. This conflicts with me. So we're right. It has to stay off. Those are the things that are gonna have to be sorted out. So here's the good news. These are not enforceable until they're adopted by other agencies. These are the accessibility guidelines. Have been enacted. They went into effect. But Department of Justice, USDOT, the USPS, the Government Services Association, the Department of Defense and Housing and Urban Development, they have to adopt them, not all of them. They have to adopt them in order for them. Right? Now, I don't know anything about it. Content cross was listening to you. 2009.
So I will say that UMUDC will be out soon, what we're told. There will be an update that comes out in a minute shortly after that. We already are working on it even before it's out.
Well, like I said, ProAg has been being worked on for decades. It's not new. And it's from the original version, I had a friend who was tracking this from down in the Kansas City area, because some personal attachment to it, was telling me what was it in 2002. It was all on. So, you know, it's actually not a bad movie, and there's some other things in there that are not. But remember who it's for. But we still have a little bit of time because these things have to be worked out. Some of these questions have to be reconciled before we can really implement. The UETC, there's going to be a lot more thing to it. It's going to keep coming out. But anything, start getting ready for it, because it's not going away. It is a rule. UETC, as John mentioned, is to adopt some of these things. Probably most, right? If not all of it, something can. But in particular with the push buttons, accessibility for roundabouts, mid-block crossings, those things are going to affect our mission significantly. And we might as well start planning and getting ready for it. I want to give some codes due, that are registered brief reading. US Access Board, they actually do have a really good website on this, on the ProAg ruling. And I also took a lot of information from Kittleson and Associates. They have a really nice presentation. And I also want to point to Mr. Jeff Ross, who's feeding the information from the ITE site, knowing that. So with that, I believe it's about happy hour time. Are there any questions? I hope there are too many.
So all our downtown section recall. Can you do the audible if there's a button?
You can. Most of the manufacturers have a health beacon. It's up on the pedestrian signal heads, and it does it doesn't have as much programming available to it, but it will do the walk. One of the key things with the accessibility thing is that like that where you're giving them enough information that it's not too late. I see getting that feedback with the push button activation. There's no way you can retrofit all of those push buttons, and it's free time. So there's not a real, but there are beacon.
They don't address fiber tactile, right?
I'm sorry, that is not.
Yeah.
But it's not
It's
push.
still what ProAg said. ProAg says that in pre-text, they don't have to have type of text.
Oh, no, okay, I missed that. Thank you. I missed that.
Des Moines has that same issue. Our downtown is all free.
The other question Thank you.
All right, but we have some real quick wrap up comments here. Let me first bring up this. We want to thank of our sponsors that generously have provided financial support. We have a new sponsorship program. If you have any questions about that, or if your firm is not shown up here and you would like to sponsor, or if you're an individual and are not shown up here and would like to sponsor, we may have some opportunities. Molly Long, our section treasurer, can help you with that and provide that information. Before we depart for the social activities, I would like to recognize the board one last time. First, I'd like to and then that's Steve Paul. He's been, Associate Rep. District Court and he it also helps keep some of Jim mentioned Tori would come up. And then also Ryan, if you could come up as well. And we just have a few more here. Dan Cook has been our section student activities coordinator. He also represents us on the Missouri Valley District Student Activities Committee. And finally, helps us. Someone who wants to sell us a lot. Doug Griffin. So with that, I really appreciate your coming out today. Hopefully, we'll see you again tomorrow for the Traffic and Safety Forum. We do have a social activity. What are the details, Tim? Help me with drinks and the like. It's heavy hors d'oeuvres is what I would. So we hope you spend a little bit of time. Networking, that's the one element of ITE. It's just not about the technical knowledge that we learn. It's also about the friendships and the networking and the camaraderie that we develop these activities, because you just never know who might help you next project or your next job, or might be your next client. So thank you again for your participation today. We'll stand adjourned now.
Yeah.